Hello and welcome to Artifactor. I'm Darrell and I'm here as always
with Greg.
I should have said the with. It's weird omission on my part.
You're here as always.
Yeah. Anyways, we're getting closer. We're getting real close to that.
All right. I feel like it's 1 step forward, 2 steps back.
Yeah.
And right now we're -6 steps back.
We'll make up some ground with subsequent iterations. Greg and Darrell 5 will be much better than Greg and Darrell 4.0, which is what
You'll know we've just given up when we just jump directly into the topics and we just don't introduce ourselves in any way anymore.
Well, I do hope that happens because that'll mean we're also like massively successful and everything speaks for itself. So, okay. But this week, I kind of alluded to it there. I think the main thing we want to talk about is GPT-5. This is the week that it arrived. After much speculation, much hype, much hullabaloo, came via a live stream this week, delivered by a smattering of folks from OpenAI.
Yeah, like everybody.
Sam. But yeah, everybody who's anybody. Actually, I think there's a lot more people who work at OpenAI than
not 11 people, but there's a lot of people on stage.
Yeah.
They all did a good job. I didn't realize until there was a little bit of, there was some stuff that like banana peels they slipped on for a second, right?
For sure.
I assumed that it was all pre-recorded.
Yeah, they did say live, but often when they say that with the televised YouTube things, like it is actually pre-recorded and then just rebroadcast live.
Right. It was live at some point, and now we just hit play. But it doesn't seem like that was the case, or they didn't edit stuff out.
No, it seems legit. There were some errors that a lot of the internet glommed onto and pointed out.
Yeah.
This is a very interesting release, in part because of how hyped it was, and then in part because anytime they do one of those big number upgrades, people have certain expectations.
Sure.
The last time they tried to do one was 4.5, and it wasn't even a full number rev, and that was also had an interesting reception. Let's say that. And this one did too. But do we want to talk about broader public reception first, or do you want to talk about your own experience first, Greg? I will leave it to you.
Should we cover, like, is it even possible to cover like the bullet points of what's really new here, just for people who are jumping in and didn't watch the 1.5-hour long stream or live stream?
Let's do that. So basically they were saying it's a much improved model. It's more capable in basically every regard, according to OpenAI, right? But the highlight points about how it's different from a user perspective is that now they are unified under one model. It's GPT-5, and then GPT-5, based on your query, will make a decision about how it wants to proceed, whether it wants to do web research, whether it wants to do extended thinking, which is more of the reasoning type approach, and what kind of output it wants to produce for you. I mean, unless you ask specifically, like it's a lot more of it is obfuscated from the user versus what it used to be. You used to have the drop-down menu for model selection. By default, it would do 4.0, but you could just pick from 5 or 6 other models in there, depending on what kind of thing you wanted to do, whether it was like an extended reasoning task or a quick query or a web-based search. That's all now hidden under the hood, and ChatGPT tries to make a best guess of what it's going to do from among those capabilities. Other thing is that is now available free. So it's available in all tiers, from free users, from non-logged in users, all the way up to people paying the highest subscription price, which is the ChatGPT Pro or Enterprise customers. And that's the first time that that's happened for one of their state-of-the-art or cutting edge frontier models, because usually they hide those behind one of their pay tiers. Now there's different limits, of course, based on which level you're paying at or not paying at, but that is itself impressive. They also reduce the cost. So from a developer perspective, the cost per token is quite reduced versus what was available with their previous cutting edge models. And it's comparable now, I think, to some of the price leading options out there, which I think is Gemini 2.5, if I remember correctly. And that puts Anthropic in a point where its thing now looks not very price competitive with the other options on a per token API use basis. So those are the big things that I think people need to know from like a top level. Am I missing anything, Greg, or does that sound right?
No, I don't think so. There are some little things they mentioned in between, and but I think you really covered the big stuff.
Cool. Okay, so that happened. They showed it. The demos were across different domains. They showed some stuff that was about code. They showed some stuff that was about building apps, which they called it, I think Sam called it on-demand applications, which is a bit different than the sort of like vibe coding stuff that people have been talking about, but essentially the same in terms of what you can accomplish. It probably still looks a little more like Claude artifacts, or like the Google one whose name escapes me that we talked about a couple weeks ago. But then it does like a replit or something that like builds full code. But it was still impressive, especially in the demo, right? Like I think the one they built was a language learning app. They built a few different things that were kind of app-like, but I think the most app-like was a language learning app for one of the OpenAI employees' spouse. He was French. He wanted to teach his wife French so that she could speak to the family better, and made a kind of little like language learning, vocabulary learning app, more or less. And a couple different iterations of that with gamified elements and things like that and tracking. So that was the thing I think that stuck out most to me. They also built an interactive simulation or visualization of the Bernoulli principle, which is the principle that keeps airplanes in the air flying and not falling out of the sky. That's my very scientific explanation of that. And that was just kind of a little visualizer. Like it was, there were interactive elements, there's sliders, which in my personal experience is also something that like it really wants to do. There seems to be something I've only had very limited experience, so I don't think this is representative, but I just found it interesting that like that came up in that app, and then that came up in the apps that I have made too, where it's like, what if there's a slider? What if there's a slider and you can adjust it like up and down for some quantity that is relevant to your query?
It's almost as if if something in your prompt is a little bit ambiguous, or it doesn't know if you want like A or B, it's like, hey, how about you can slide between A and B?
Yeah,
like, it's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. And then there's other things that it shares that are, and they talked about some of them that are kind of fundamental to how it generates. Like it uses purple a lot, and I'm looking at an app right now that I generated in which I did not specify use purple as your primary UI color, and it went for it. Yeah, so some quirks, but I found, at least in my usage, pretty capable with some caveats there.
Yeah,
which we can get into. But
sure.
yeah, an interesting new feature set, like the most significant new feature set for my use so far versus how I have used ChatGPT in the past. In many of the other ways that I've used ChatGPT in the past, it does not feel significantly different, I would say. But Greg, what do you think?
Yeah. Well, going back to the announcement itself, to do this Apple style announcement is very interesting to me.
It is.
Because like we've talked about this a little bit before, it's very hard to compare model to model in a way that actually matters to everybody, right? You saw this a lot in this live stream where they had to go back to a lot of like charts, like here are all these tests on this, like within the medical field or within programming, and like here is how this is better than that, right? And like that doesn't tell a great story to a lot of people, right? Like unless it's each one is kind of honed in its own way. The main thing here that I'm trying to get to is that I think OpenAI, and I think every AI company, has kind of accidentally built perhaps the most subjective and personalized technology in history, right? Where when you jump in and whether or not you like it, none of the stats really matter. It's about whether or not you vibe with it, right?
Yes.
Whether or not it still feels right to you. It's almost as if like, this is a really, really shitty analogy, but you're hanging out with a buddy for years, and then he's like, hey, I went to the doctor because I don't know, I bumped my head, and I went and they gave me a new brain.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's not like that's not even a science fiction analogy. Like it's kind of like, because there's also tons of documented cases of people having traumatic brain injuries and then having like a very significant personality shift, right?
Yeah.
And that is kind of what it feels like is happening every time they do one of these model upgrades, right?
Exactly, right? And so with each one, it's less about these charts and like these little stat differences and more about whether or not like, hey, they give my buddy a new brain. Like, do I still want to hang out? Do I still enjoy his company as much?
Yeah.
It's like, it's a weird way to boil it down, but that's really what it comes down to is, do people like it as much as the previous model in each interaction,
Yes.
right? Does it do the things they need, but also do they enjoy just talking to it as much? Okay. And like, to do that while simultaneously, to some degree, taking away the previous models, or at least like burying them in settings, or I think they've actually said like, hey, we plan to sunset them in like 2 months or whatever. Like, to do that at the same time is pretty wild, right? Because like it, like, especially to bury it away the way that they did, where it just gave people this fear of like this, like, I think we've seen this a lot in people's reactions to it on Reddit or Twitter or whatever, where they're so strongly comparing it because they're thinking about what's not there anymore, what they can't access anymore, right?
Yeah, I did see a lot of that in the reaction. Like they were like, "Oh, my favorite was O3, for instance," right? And like, I really miss O3. I want it back. I just want to toggle to be able to use it. And that is, I think, in part what you're talking about. Like, I would be very interested if they did some kind of follow-up broad-based user survey, which they kind of do, because in app it prompts you like, how do you like this? I got some of those prompts when I was using 5. Like, how do you like the personality of this answer? Like, do
Yeah,
you rate
and
it
I
good or
mean,
bad?
it's hard to do when you're launching something, but those are the stats that ultimately matter,
Yeah.
right? It's like with the medical stuff, with the developer stuff, with even just the general personality stuff, to be able to say like, oh, like, we had 200 professional coders working with this for the past 2 months, and 99% of them prefer this. Like, that'll mean more to most people
Yes.
than any of these, like, oh, here's this individual test that you don't really know much about.
Yeah, I think that's true broadly, and for a lot of use cases, and probably more than we would think. Like there's a certain category of usage in which the difference between like 93% accuracy and 97% accuracy is like meaningful and very significant, and like will affect whether the product is viable or not, right? So that's, I think, a different consideration. But for almost all the consumer use case considerations,
Right.
I think what you're talking about is much more important
Yeah,
and felt.
I'm strictly talking about like general internet response to it.
Yeah.
Not whether or not it's useful like for doctors, right? Obviously, like, its actual accuracy matters more than whether or not you enjoy talking to it.
Right. Right.
I don't enjoy talking to my doctor, but I still respect the hell out of my doctor. You know?
Yeah. And I think even for consumers like that gap, even on a medical basis, if as like because actually one of the use cases they brought up was a very, curious your thoughts on it, but they did bring on a woman who had unfortunately been diagnosed with 3 different cancers, like in one meeting or one appointment rather.
Yeah.
And so obviously that's a lot to deal with. And so she was using ChatGPT as a health advisor to guide her through that very complex and unfortunate diagnosis, right? So that's a case where I'm like, I think that delta doesn't matter even there. Like, I think people would prefer having the thing that is like maybe slightly less accurate, but more compassionate or easier to understand or easier to interact with. So this brings me to another thing that I saw in passing, but it was from a ChatGPT engineer, a person on the team. Actually, I think he's either in design or go-to-market, so not engineer, but works at OpenAI, and was reposting, I think, a colleague talking about publishing a guide on how to prompt GPT-5, and that there are subtle differences, which to me was very interesting as one possible reason why people are finding a lot of like, I don't think this is as good as what it replaced, right? Because that is a lot of the sentiment that is coming out of Reddit, at least just at a glance, or a lot of the stuff that is bubbling up and being endorsed, reposted, whatever. Maybe because it's controversial, and like the standard case of like, no, it's pretty much the same, is not nearly as interesting. I don't want to like ascribe necessarily perfect accuracy to that, but like, it's interesting seeing those responses and then thinking about somebody on the OpenAI team saying, I think you're prompting it wrong. It brings back vibes of like,
You're holding it wrong.
You're holding it wrong. For iPhone 4? Was that 4? The one with the all metal outside antenna.
Yep.
Which then, if you held it in a certain way, it shortcut the cellular modem.
Yeah.
And Apple famously came out, and it was Steve Jobs at the time, and said, oh, you're holding it wrong. It's not engineered improperly. You're holding it wrong, right? Which is like, you don't tell users that they're doing the thing wrong. You mess something up if that's the case, right?
Right. And this is especially true with something like AI or an LLM, which is people expect it to adapt to them. So there should be no way to prompt it wrong.
Right.
There should be no way to hold it wrong, you know?
Yeah. But and that tracks a little bit with some of my experience in that things that I was able to previously ask it to do in one way no longer produce that result or that quality or consistency of result when I did it with the new one. But in other ways, it seems to have far exceeded the capabilities of others in my experience. So it's definitely mixed for me in terms of experience so far. I haven't spent a ton of time with it, in part because they did a staged rollout and like maybe Canadians were last in line or something. I don't know, but it like came later to me than to others. Yeah. And then the other part of that is that I just generally prefer Claude and always have. So I use Claude as my default go-to chat.
Sure. Yeah, I got it on day one. I was lucky there. I got a little bit late in day one. And when I first got in there, it was absolute. I saw a lot of brilliance in it. And then as the day went on, I don't know if it was because more people were getting onto it or it just happened to be the order in which I was asking it to do things. It was oscillating between being super smart and being really, really dumb.
Okay.
At one point, I asked it like, "Who was the host of Disrupt of TechCrunch Disrupt in 2016?" And who was the MC? And it said MC Hammer.
Wait, I want to know the real answer to this.
That's the thing is the information would be kind of tough for it to find online. It was probably Jason Kincaid at the time.
It was either Jason Kincaid or Anthony, right? Like those were the only big options, or did we briefly have some other hosts?
Maybe Jordan, but the thing is here, it's like information that if it could go really, really, really deep, it could probably find it. But if it was only going like one layer deep and then just hallucinating something, it would be kind of obvious.
Yeah,
right?
If you had the option to toggle the research button, is that still there? Before I say something dumb.
No, that's a good question. That's a very good question.
Yeah. We'll have to live check this and report back. No, I think it's not. It just says ask anything. Yeah. So, you can click the plus and you can get agent mode, deep research, create image, think longer, and web search, study and learn canvas. Those are the options now, right? So
and,
you can
to
manually
be clear,
select those.
I think in this case I had it on ChatGPT-5 thinking, right? Yeah. Which is the mode in which it's supposed to like if it needs to spend more time mulling over this, it will, right?
But it's a judge that no, I can do this really quick, and here it is.
But this is another case where I've tweeted about stuff and people are like, "Oh, you should have used thinking mode." It's like, but I get that and I appreciate that, but at the same time, like the whole kind of point of this is like you didn't have to think about which model it's using, right? Yeah. It's like something they touted overall, so it goes back to a you're holding it wrong thing.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
So.
Yeah, and it should so that's where I found a lot of stuff too, is there's a mismatch between what the model decides it should do and what I would have anticipated it would do in that instance in exactly the way you're talking about. Like, I'll ask a question and I'll be like, well, I'm probably going to think about this. And then it'll spit back an answer instantly fast. And speed was one of the things they touted, right? And the speed does seem much improved, almost suspiciously so, which is a thing I brought up with like a few different people over the years, including the company Cerebras that does
I don't know.
They build the like huge wafer-sized chips for AI inference, and their speeds are wild, right? Like if you run any model, any inference on their chips, it comes back many thousands of times faster than it does. And the thing I brought up with Andrew, who's the CEO, who is very smart, I encourage anybody to go listen to him on any podcast that you can find. I think he's a genius and like just a all around very interesting person. But I was like, but don't you get distrust from like a user level if it comes speed? Like I feel like a certain amount of delay is actually, there's a point at which you're like, great, I want speed, I want it. And then there's a point past which you're like, I don't trust this anymore because it moved too fast, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is a weird thing I think that all of the AI makers are going to find is that there is a little bit of upside to a little bit of delay to all of this stuff. It's the same with like when I was working with or playing around with DALL-E or later like ChatGPT's built-in image generation stuff where when it would come back too fast, it felt like there was like
you're like, oh, you must
there was delayed gratification in the anticipation of seeing it kind of like render and think, right, before popping out this image. Whereas if it like popped out in a second, like, you know, like
you didn't try hard. Like you could have tried harder than that, right? It's more anthropomorphizing, but it's seems to work, or seems to be real, at least for me. So yeah, I think that was an interesting thing for them to emphasize, and I think it's kind of, I think that what they'll find is that doesn't super matter in terms of like user satisfaction or user experience. And if it does, it's maybe a negative, right?
Sure.
At this point, like, yeah, up to this point, diminishing returns, and maybe on some of the longer thinking chain things, it is actually great to have those time savings. Right?
If I had to bet, if it'll differ by age group.
Yeah, that's probably true too.
Right.
Because younger people will expect a higher quality instantaneously versus like it should take away some
Whereas
time.
we're kind of used to computers, like when they're really trying hard, it takes a second.
Well, they
like,
used to make noise.
You can hear the fan spinning up.
Yeah, you can hear the drive. You can hear the drive spinning. Remember?
Yeah.
You're like, oh, it's really thinking. It's going this time.
Yeah, it's like why some people, like, they still expect cars to be like brum, 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 and make that sound. And if it doesn't anymore because it's an electric car, like, oh, this car's not a good car. It's not fast. It's like, oh, that car will absolutely destroy your car. In every way.
In every possible way. That brings up another, this is a tangent, but like, I hate loud cars and loud motorcycles. I think those people have fundamental problems inside of their brain, that because I'm like, what are you doing? Why are you demonstrating this? It's just annoying to everyone else. It only provides pleasure to you, and to everyone else it is aggravating and stupid. So like, what's the matter with you? You're literally a psychotic person. Like, that's the only possible explanation. Anyways, if you have a muscle car, please leave a comment.
You just lost us the 3% of our audience that is muscle car fans.
and Harley riders. So like, they're in there too.
Well,
yeah.
Bye.
You need an underlying model swap if you enjoy that.
Oh, God. Okay, so in a nutshell here, your experience, good, bad, or too mixed to tell right now?
Too mixed to tell right now. It was really good. So let me go through some like practical examples to contextualize that. But one of the things I had it do, because I was most intrigued by this kind of like on-demand app feature, again, just seemed the most significantly different. So I had it do like one thing that me and Tara, my wife, for the podcast, in case I didn't know, want to do is, since we're both able to do remote work, like we want to decamp to a warmer part of the world for a couple months out of the year in the winter every year. And Costa Rica is like our chosen destination for that, just because we really love it there and it's beautiful and affordable and all kinds of good things about it, right? But I said, oh, like I want to have, I'm intending to do this for 2 months out of the year. And I gave it some particulars about like budget, whatever else, right? Like, what would you recommend? And it, to its credit, it did the thinking thing. Like, it was a substantive paragraph with a lot of parts. So I think that was like, that's what I would have expected. So it took it away and said, doing extended thinking about this, right? And it came back with a pretty good comprehensive answer of like, oh, like based on your criteria, I wanted to be on the Pacific Ocean side, near a small, like a larger town or city if possible, right? And it brought back like, here are your best bets. Here's the price range you can expect to pay. Here's what you can expect to get for that. And it would be like, and if you want to stretch your budget, you get this much, whatever, or this is a more affordable option. It kind of like went up and down from that. And then I said, hey, can you like just make this into an interactive web app that I can share with my spouse? And it was like, oh yeah, absolutely. So it took that away, made that, and then, you know, shows me in code, and then you can do the canvas thing where you like switch over to like deploy the actual app, right? And it will deploy it, like using Firebase or something under the hood, right? But it did that, and then I clicked on them. It has map links for all the destination, and then this had sliders too. Slider for price, slider for exchange rate, because it was doing CAD to USD, because mostly in Costa Rica you use USD, right? But I clicked on the map and it had an error, like a database error, whatever it was, and I just placed the error and I'm like, hey, like it's getting this error, and it was like, oh, I see what's wrong, and then I'll swap all those links with this link that will work. Same error. Oh, I see what's wrong. Yeah, I still didn't swap them. I'm gonna go through and do that. Blah blah blah. Do it. Same error. So this time it's like, hey, I see what's happening. I can't change it. Here's what you need to go manually change in the code to make it work. Just copy and paste these snippets into the code. And then I was like, no, I'm not doing that. This is literally what I said to the chatbot. I was like, I'm not doing that. Refactor the entire app from the ground up so that it works. And then it took that and it did. It just rebuilt it bottom up structure. And then it worked like, well, right? So
did it give you any reasoning as to why it couldn't do that?
it said that there was a like critical error but it was like a critical error in something you have done app.
Yeah.
Like you can figure that out. And also I don't know anything about code, so I can't figure that.
At the end of the day, did you get an app that worked?
Yeah, I did. So it was
did
like
it work for Terra? Like you could share the.
Yeah, I could share it. We could click around. Worked. It had Airbnb links. Those had always worked. It had Google Maps links like to the area. Like with each, it created a category for each area, and then you could click on that, and underneath each it would have like the Airbnb links. The Google has a product for like booking too. I forget what it's called, and then the Maps links and like local tourist information and stuff like that, right? Like had all the relevant information right there, clickable to the right place. Didn't require, crucially, like didn't do anything that required any like external APIs or anything like that. It was all like contained, right? Which is exactly what I wanted. I wanted it to be lightweight, whatever.
I mean, honestly, I want this app. I want a better thing for planning trips with my spot or with my partner here. You know,
that was like, inspired me to then make another one, which worked much better in one shot, which was like, we're going to Japan for vacation in September, end of September. And I just said, okay, like make me a Japan itinerary planning app for these dates or whatever. And it did that. And it worked very well off of one shot. There's a bunch of refinements I'm going to make, but like, it's collaborative. Like,
honestly, I feel like you're kind of onto something here. If you make this like a more generalized thing, like you let me punch in where I'm going, and then it presents both me and my wife like almost like Tinder like interface of like, what do we want to do? You know, and it just automatically finds the things that where both of us would align.
Actually, yeah, that would be a really good. This is just like not even for the podcast, but like notes for product development. Like, yeah, adding in like give me a query to determine my taste and then find things relevant to that to introduce. Like that's very smart.
This is totally a tangent, but my wife has introduced me to a pretty wild way of traveling, which is where, like, say if we're flying to Portland, right? She's just got a Google map with like a bunch of stars on it, right? All the things that she's favorited. And she picks one thing for the day. And then when she's done with that, she just like opens up the map, is like, where are the closest stars? Like, I don't have a planned, like a real set itinerary, but like what's close by and matches with my current energy.
Yeah.
You know, like how do I feel right now and what's closest? And it actually works really, really well. So I don't know, man, there's ways to do this in group travel that would work really, really, really well.
That sounds exactly like my preferred type of travel, which is like not really hard planned, but like aligned to what I'm interested in.
Well, like make sure you do one thing a day, like check that box. And then it's like, just go with it.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you end up and it's like 4 p.m. and you've been walking and it's way sunnier than you expected. So you're fried, you're dehydrated, you don't have energy. And all you want is like, you don't want to do the thing that's on your itinerary next. You just want to go sit at a cidery, you know, and like stare off in the hills or something.
Yeah. I like that. And that'll be a key pillar of this product as well.
Y'all are watching product development live right now.
Well, the thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take this away and then try to do it in Replit, because the thing that I learned most about this is like there's still plenty of room for dedicated tools for this kind of use, because they are just better at a lot of this stuff, and they wouldn't have the like weird cell phone errors, especially if you're trying to make something more sophisticated. So I'm going to do that. But
let's go back to GPT-5 here. I feel like
I know, because I was trying to bring it on track too, because the other task that I try to do, which is like my main other use of ChatGPT currently, since I use Claude for most writing tasks and things, is image generation. Yeah. And Henry will know this. Henry Pickavit. Hi, Henry. I hope you're listening. But I love to generate like versions of myself and my dog and family in the style of the Scott Pilgrim comics, which Brian Lee O'Malley, please God, I hope you're not listening to this, because I very much respect you and your IP. But I tried to do that in GPT-5 the way that I have been doing in GPT-4o, and the results were not good. And I think it was one of these like prompting error things, because I uploaded a picture of me and my dog, like real pictures, and said, okay, like make me a version of these two characters walking down the Toronto waterfront, happy, whatever, in like Scott Pilgrim comic style, right? And it then just created a great image of a random man who looked very much like Scott Pilgrim, and a dog that it was a blonde dog, like a very different color than my black dog.
It was a dog, not your dog.
It was a dog, yeah, walking down the Toronto waterfront. Got that part right, but like nothing to do with the pictures. And I said, hey, you didn't use the reference pictures at all. And it said, oh yeah. And then it generated another one, and this was two photorealistic people, like a photorealistic person and a photorealistic dog in a photorealistic environment, one of which who looks eerily like me, kind of, and then like not the dog, obviously the person, and and a dog that again was a blonde dog. And then I was like, okay, now you've done it completely wrong because you ignored this. I said, look, here's what I want. I forget exactly how I said. Let me try to find the prompt so that I'm not just making stuff up. But I said, make the image look like the Scott Pilgrim comic style, but use the reference images of the person and the dog to create the characters. Like, okay, do you need more? Do you need me to walk you through this? And then it made an image that looked like a Scott Pilgrim version of me. Got it. Thank you. Did take off my glasses. I don't know why. But still the blonde dog. And I'm like, what are you doing? So
I love that it's willing to like make something look like you, no problem. But the dog, it's like, no, that dog did not say it's okay.
Well, I'm also realizing like, so what it did with the one that was photorealistic, like it took my face and put it on like a different person, it seems like, and removed my glasses. And then in the last animated one, it used that clearly as a reference, not my original picture. So not good results. Like good generation. The quality of the generation, very good. But
just not what you wanted.
Yeah, not at all what I wanted. Instruction following all over the place. So,
but did it make you want to go back to 4.0?
Yes, it did. Because I was like, oh, I have whole chat histories of me having like very similar conversations with 4.0 where the results are terrific, right?
Yeah. The reason I ask is because like, so obviously like OpenAI has made it official, or at least said to reporters, like they plan to sunset the legacy models within the next few months. At least this was as of launch day, right? Or before launch day. And it introduces this weird problem where on one hand, they want to just keep moving forward. They don't want all this cruft of the previous models and having to run those on their hardware and deal with people who want that, right? But a lot of people probably have developed affinities for these models or the way that they respond. And so they're going to very quickly find themselves, as they get more popular, at this friction point of like, do we only want to focus on the new thing, or do we want to support these legacy models almost indefinitely for the people who just prefer those, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that is a big, like, because it looked like they were doing it for the reasons you're talking about, like efficiency from a production maintenance overhead thing, but efficiency for cost too. Like some people were characterizing this as like, this was almost entirely like a cost rationalization, like pricing structure rationalization exercise for OpenAI, and much more about pushing towards profitability than about any actual tangible benefits in the AI itself. Yeah. So I can see that.
I wish I could comment here, but like the economics here are absurd.
Yeah,
right?
They are beyond my comprehension.
Both because it's like something that, it's a completely new field, but it's also something that's AI is being subsidized in different directions by different companies everywhere, right? With NVIDIA giving out hardware to certain people, or Microsoft being like, use our servers, right? It's like, it's wild to think. I have no idea how the economic cards fall.
Yeah, so that is more speculative, but I just bring it up as like maybe because honestly, I think there's a lot that I look at about this and I kind of scratch my head. So I'm like seeking answers as for why. I think the other thing that I've found very interesting about this is like people talking about how it has lowered their estimate of like when we will achieve AGI, or like whether that's even a thing we're on trajectory for anymore.
Sure.
And I can kind of feel that too. Although, yeah, some of the stuff, like I think they even said they had a bug, right? Like, didn't they say that at launch there was like a bug in ChatGPT 5 that like led to a lot of the performance
If I'm
errors?
remembering correctly, here on launch day, there was an AMA on Reddit where, I don't know if it was Sam, I don't know if it was someone else from OpenAI, who said effectively like, hey, if it feels dumb, it's because this one routing aspect of it kind of fell over at launch. Like it just got hit harder than we expected, and so it wasn't routing the way we wanted it to. That's fixed now, right? So I've tried to, over the weekend, tried to go back in and like go in with that in mind and try the same things a second time, and results have still been kind of mixed.
Yeah. So that was my next question, was what about your overall results and feeling about the model?
Yeah, I do miss 4.0 in a lot of ways. Oh, like it's because everyone's experience here is going to be pretty subjective. Like I don't want to say like, oh, this aspect of it sucks. So I'll just focus on what's been better to me, right? Like it's at worst has been mixed for me. Nothing really, really, really terrible. So I'll focus on where it's been better. It has been better at finding the little bits that it recognizes that I don't know, and offering those up. Okay, like I was over time, like with my family members' consent, I've been using ChatGPT to like kind of like dig up information about a medical condition that they're dealing with, right? And then I was talking to ChatGPT 5 about something, and it effectively said like, oh hey, like I can tell you have questions about like about this aspect, and there's been new research here, you know? And so like it flagged that for me, which I don't think I've ever seen previous versions of ChatGPT do, where like it saw the gaps, right? That like that I had in my brain. I was like, oh hey, here's the info. It wasn't like, oh, do you want me to like generate potential questions for your doctor? It was like, here's a precise thing that I can see is lacking in your understanding, and it identified that, and that was pretty freaking cool, right? I have found it pretty necessary to get the results I want to use thinking mode, as a couple of people suggested to me over Twitter. I don't like having to do that. It does take longer. It does feel like it's like they've buried like good mode, like what click away,
Right.
you know? I like, there's been a couple times where it's done a much better job than any AI system I've seen before of telling me why it can't do something. Right, which is actually pretty key. To give a counterexample here, a couple weeks ago, I was using Google's Veo, and all I wanted it to do was to render, like I say all as if it's like a silly thing that anything could have done 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But I wanted an
I just wanted
astronaut.
it to do literal magic is all.
I wanted a video of an astronaut that was in a rocket that was clearly kind of like in the cockpit of something that was having trouble behind it, right? There were sparks and flames and stuff, and he was like communicating over the intercom of like, hey, like this is what I want my family to know, right? It wasn't anything like super, super dark. It's probably been in like 1,000 sci-fi movies, this scene of like, tell my family I love them, right? I wanted that kind of thing. And Veo just fucking refused, man. Like no matter what I did, no matter, I tried to get rid of the sparks. I could not for the life of me figure out what it wanted. And it was particularly frustrating with Veo because it only gives you like a couple shots. So when it actually would render something, it was so far from what I wanted. So for ChatGPT 5 to have some semblance of being able to explain why it won't do something, like I'm not trying to do anything super sketchy, but so when it hits that limit, I need to know why, right? Why it won't do the thing I'm asking. It does a pretty good job of that. So,
yeah. Well, it also has this weird, elegant failback mode, right? Where it's like it's supposed to not refuse queries that it finds to be against its terms or services or limitations. It's supposed to like answer a slightly different version of that query that it deems safe is one of the things that it's apparently going to do. I haven't run up against that, but I also haven't like red teamed it to find those edges. Right.
Yeah. And I mean, it's funny because we have this conversation about how, you know, it's doing something magic that things even a year ago couldn't do. And I think that's going to be the hardest thing that all of these companies are butting up against, right? Like you remember when video game consoles were being developed, right? Like every generation seemed absolutely massive. You could look at I don't know, the jump from the SNES to the N64, and it was like, and it took years, right, to get to that moment where all of a sudden where the poly count was so high that people are like, I don't know, do I really need the PlayStation 11 or whatever, right? Like, what is that? Is next gen actually that big of a jump? I feel like we've gotten there with AI fairly quickly.
Yes, we have.
Where like the jump from one number to the next for a long time is going to be very, very hard for companies to explain and to get people actually excited about any of it.
Yeah. And I think that's like a combination of things. I think the big question still is whether or not that's like this is the limits of transformer-based technology and we're approaching them, or whether it's that thing we've talked about a few times where like on many tasks it's already saturated, it's already perfect, or as perfect as what it's meant to emulate, which is a human being, and therefore the gains will be invisible if you're mostly evaluating on those trajectories, and it'll continue to see gains in things like benchmarks or domains where like it's almost impossible to have the understanding, and unless you're like one of 10 people in the world who have that understanding. So
yeah,
I wonder about that generally, but I think either one, it doesn't matter. Like I think it, regardless of which of those things is causing it, it's definitely happening. And then it's like, what does that mean for the future of the technology and the trajectory of the businesses based on it to date?
Yeah. I think in the long run, it will probably make more sense to not do it as these big hyped up live streams.
Yeah. Yeah. That too. The marketing around it is I think a separate concern, which especially Sam is a show person, right?
Yeah.
And
I mean, he's literally been on stage at Apple keynotes, so there's going to be some degree of wanting to emulate an Apple keynote in his blood.
Yes. And this is where I was thinking about this. Like, I think that he has to date enjoyed, at least for himself, and I think other people also consider this true of him, that he has the ability to create the kind of reality distortion field that Steve Jobs was famous for being able to create. But I don't think he's not able to in the way that Steve was, because Steve was like able to bend the world to his perspective every single time, basically, even in the face of like absurd counter logic. I mean, though You're Holding It Wrong was like a good example. It's probably the one time where it would like started to get shaky and people were like, no, but like it didn't really affect the fortunes of that phone in a meaningful way, right? So I think Sam is running up against that now, where like, yeah, he's seemed like the master show person, and like he can call the shots and he's predicting the future. And with this one, it felt more like, didn't you just sell us the same thing, but like with a new number on it and maybe a little bit worse? And like, that seems like a very real reaction to this keynote, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyways, I think it's too early to tell though. Like, I think a lot of these things are just, like we talked about, there's so many reasons why there are complicating factors in terms of like how we feel emotionally about the personality of the product. Yeah. And then there's things where like maybe capabilities are not yet visible or apparent, because there's things we just don't try with these things yet. So
yeah,
I'll reserve judgment, but for right now, it doesn't seem like it's going to change significantly how I use AI or which products I use in my AI stack. So
yeah.
Moving on to one of the products I do use in my AI stack more, which is Anthropic's Claude. It also got an update, not as bombastic an update. In general, Anthropic doesn't do the marketing.
Perhaps that is the best indication of how I actually feel about GPT-5 right now, is that my Claude usage has gone way up this week.
Yes. I've been using, so the new model they released was Opus 4.1, which is a new, like a 0.1 iteration. Those numbers mean almost nothing now in the AI era. When you have like fractional point versus like full point releases, it's kind of like, I don't know what's happening. But this is their largest model, largest consumer available model, and it's the reasoning one. And they made a small change to it, but it does seem to have brought significant performance improvements, at least in my usage. And the quality of stuff that I'm getting out of there is much better. Usually I use it for writing, and not for myself, but for work and for clients and stuff. So like, I'm finding that it's really, really good. It was already really good. It's better in all the ways that I want it to be. And it hasn't undergone any kind of fundamental weird reversions or changes in the way that like GPT-5 has.
Yeah, it's only one step forward, not the 2 steps back stuff.
Yeah. That's all I had to share about that. Anything that you wanted to talk about with regards to Anthropic or Claude?
No, not in particular. Is there anything that they noted as being particularly new or noteworthy in 4.1?
Not that I saw, but I also didn't fully digest this like on the announcement front. I just saw that it was there in the model picker and
Yeah.
then saw on social like some notes that it was out and then
Yeah.
started using it, which again is, I think, to their credit, like the fact that I like didn't really dig into like the whys and hows, but just started using it and was like, this is better, right?
Yeah. I guess if I'm going to talk about anything with Anthropic this week, and I hesitate to talk about it because it's like it's so over my head that I don't fully understand it. But they started talking with the last week or two about this idea of like persona vectors, right? Where they can identify certain traits, like to make it super simple, like evil, right? And figure out how to turn those up or down or like almost like isolate them and remove them, right? And it goes back to this fundamental idea that's very important within AI of vector embeddings. And to way, way, way oversimplify that, imagine a 3D space where you can map a bunch of concepts and how similar they are to each other in a 3D space, right? It's easy enough for us to imagine that a cat and a dog are kind of similar to each other in the animal space.
Yeah,
now instead
but a
of
bird is going to be like on
like
a total...
further away.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Now imagine that instead of in 3 dimensions, it's in like nth dimensions, right? It's on like 1,000 zillion trillion dimensions because it's not happening in our brain that runs in a 3D space. It's happening in a computer, which doesn't care about the number of dimensions, right? You can keep going more and more granular to increase the resolution, right? That's a very, very oversimplification of vector embeddings. And so I think with persona vectors, they've identified like almost ways of like figuring out character traits and identifying where those exist in this infinitely depthed dimension, right? And being able to turn those up or down. And the reason I explain all of this is because there's almost like throwaway line where they talk about exposing within the training data information like the traits that they don't want, and then using that to almost vaccinate the AI or the LLM, which is an absolutely wild idea to me. So instead of completely omitting it from, it's almost like if a brain surgeon is doing surgery and they're doing an fMRI on the patient to figure out which parts of their brain are lighting up, you expose it to a little bit of that information and you go, oh, okay, not that. Like that's what we don't want.
Well, I mean, the vaccination metaphor is also super apt, right? Because it is like literally introducing a bit of the undesirable thing into the body, the host organism, so that it can, oh, I see that. I can now provide a reasonable, worthwhile defense. Like, because you've exposed it to me in a limited fashion, I was able to produce antibodies that can address that specific thing. And now I know the blueprint and the memory, and I can recreate those antibodies in future much more easily and efficiently when exposed to wide swaths of that thing that you've shown me, right?
Right. To avoid the behavior or characteristics that you want in an AI, it has to have some idea of what that is in the first place, right? Which is kind of counterintuitive, I think, to a lot of people, including me.
Yeah. I think a lot of the approach to date has been like, well, let's keep them innocent. Again, too much anthropomorphization, but everybody does it with these things. It's like, no, we'll keep them innocent and pure, and then that way they'll never go down that route, and we'll just like erect walls to prevent them. I mean, again, to stretch the analogy, this would be like if you bubble boyed your child and you're like, I don't want my child to get sick. I'm going to put them in a hermetically sealed bubble for their entire lives, right? Like,
and then, oops, one germ got in there.
Yeah, like, oh, small hole in the bubble, it's over. Or something makes its way inside. That's very cool. I also like that they're talking that there's Persona Vectors, great video game series. I don't know if that's part of why, but yeah, it's that's neat. And I mean, I still think we talk a lot about Anthropic and the way that just our admiration for the way they're doing things, but I genuinely feel that, and this is another good example of that, right? So it's cool. Let's switch to a different kind of AI company.
All right,
let's talk about Grok.
No,
our old friends.
Yeah,
they're back. Back and hornier than ever.
Why every time we talk about Grok, it's something horny? Okay.
That is its differentiator.
Okay, that's fair.
Like if you line them up against each other, you're like, what's different about this one? And you're like, this one's hornier. And I don't know if that's good or bad. I mean, probably not good. But the thing I wanted to talk about specifically about this was Imagine Mode, which you may have seen if you still remain on Twitter on the cesspool nightmare platform that is X, which I do. I love. I wallow around in it like filth. It's terrific. But the Elon and all the XAI Stan crew has been tweeting about this incessantly, and they've integrated it directly into Twitter. So Imagine Mode is like basically an image generation and video generation capability. And you can, one thing you can do is take static images from Twitter and you can long press on them if you're on mobile and make video in Grok, and it will lay it up to Grok. You have to have the app installed separately. This is another installation vector for Grok, right? Like they're just trying to do it to juice the Grok installations, but you make a video in Grok, it ports that image over to Grok, uploads it, and then makes a video out of it. And it is fascinating and addictive in a way that I found really compelling. So I understand why they introduce something like this, in part just because you like see a static image and you're like, I wonder what it's going to do with the video. Like, what motion is it going to make it do? So it also adds sound, and it gives you like 3 or 4 soundtrack options for each clip, right? And it's a very short clip. Like, I think it's like a 5-second clip or something, or less than that, right? But like I did, like someone was holding up a book, and I'm like, okay, what are you going to do to animate the cover of this book? And it just kind of did like I'm waving it around, and I was like, oh, that's weird but fascinating. One was like a static image of a quote, and I said, how are you gonna animate this? Like just text on a white background. And it didn't. It just made a video clip of it being static for 5 seconds. But if you have people in it or anything like that, like it does do interesting things. Someone had posted like just an image of them at their office, like a startup office, working with their colleagues, and I posted that, and it did kind of like a zoom and pan, and people were on their computers and like being active in the space, but not like exaggerated or anything. Just felt like, oh yeah, you're doing like an interesting little zoom pan around like a group of people working in an office, right? I did, someone had posted a picture of a car they were reviewing, static picture, did that, and it animated it driving through the scene and then like onto a road, right? Like actually pretty cool, pretty interesting. It does really interesting things with abstract images too. Just like makes them look trippier, I guess, like with more visual effects and motion effects. And then I did one that was somebody had posted the photo of Donald Trump and Andrew Epstein. No, what's his name? Jeffrey Epstein smoking cigars, which is, I'm sure everyone has seen because it's like one of the ones that people post when talking about the Epstein files. But I animated that one, and they like had them laughing uproariously and like enjoying smoking their cigars and like taking drags off their cigars or whatever, right? So it's like good. It's surprisingly good at what it does. Their image generation is like also pretty good, although no one ever looks photorealistic.
Yeah.
Like they look like weird cartoony even when it's aiming for like photorealistic, like too shiny, too whatever, right? But yeah, it's definitely interesting. I can see it as a hugely successful and effective engagement play. I don't think it's like a real thing. I think it's like a toy more than anything else, right?
Yeah.
But the other weird aspect about it is you can toggle on NSFW or off. And I've heard, I haven't experienced this myself, I haven't gone on my way to try to get it to this, that it does a lot of like people just like ripping off their clothes if you like ask it to go the NSFW route. Right?
Yeah, I mean, as much as it sucks, like Elon's willingness to embrace that aspect of this will probably help it win in a lot of ways, or at least stand its ground. Because like, look at every technology in the last 30 to 40 years, right?
Yeah.
VHS versus Betamax. VHS won mostly because of porn.
Yeah. Tumblr, Reddit,
like, HD DVD versus Blu-ray, right?
Yeah.
Tumblr, Reddit. The internet overall largely successful because of horny people, right? And it feels way too rudimentary to boil it down in this way, but it's an advantage to them in some ways. You know, it's finding them an audience, and it's
It's a wedge when it's in a place where it's very hard to find a wedge, like that industry, especially as they're a new entrant. They're a well-capitalized new entrant, but they're a new entrant, right?
Yeah. So I understand completely why Elon is willing to kind of dance on the edge of what's allowed here.
Yeah. I mean, he's dancing on it in more ways than one, because the other weird thing about this is if you ask it to create a video from scratch, or no, an image from scratch, it will generate 2 versions of it at least. No, actually, wait, no, I think it was video. I can't remember, but it always provides you multiples. But I did do an image prompt, and it just provided me an endless waterfall of them. And you keep scrolling, and there's more. And I'm like, how much did you just burn to do this? Like, OpenAI like painstakingly produces one image, and you're just, it's an infinite scroll. I think it keeps going and generating. And it's same with like the voice. It's doing 4 audios for every video thing. Like, he seems much more willing than many others to burn, I think, literal diesel in the case of his data centers, and energy and time and credits on this thing, like to give users options, which I think is remarkable for many reasons, not least of which that he used to be like basically an environmental crusader. But yeah, it's that also I think contributes to that, right? It's like, how do we differentiate ourselves from everybody? Volume and porn, right? Like, those are the differentiators. So
yeah,
really interesting approach. But
yeah, no, 100%. I mean, Elon is an enigma. Elon of today versus what Elon said 5 to 10 years ago. You can't compare the two. You can't compare Elon 14 versus Elon 15, just like you can't compare model to model.
That's true. Yeah. Although we should build models of that. Like, it would be fun to build an app that is like, try to occupy the headspace of both Elons and then debate yourself. Okay. That's enough probably about Grok Imagine. It's out there. It's dirty if you want it to be. Enough said, right?
Yeah.
But how about, this is another, I think this is like related in that it's like visual generation and super technically impressive. Yeah. But DeepMind talked about their Genie 3, which is not a publicly available thing. This is like a thing they're developing. It's a research project, right? But it's a world model generator. Their third, it's Genie 1, Genie 2. This is Genie 3. They seem to improve significantly with each iteration. This one can now create stable, fully 3D, immersive 3D environments for, I think, multiple minutes is what they said. Consistent across multiple minutes as you interact with the environment, right?
Yeah, I think we're going to need to drop some like B-roll here, like as we're talking, so people understand what we're talking about. Because this is the first time in a while when we're talking about how, we're starting to feel kind of the edges of what AI can do right now. And like, there's nothing that's really going to be mind blowing because it's not a big enough jump from generation to generation. This is the first time in a while where I've been like, oh,
yeah,
like that's wild.
Yes, I saw this and I was shocked, and I didn't understand the full import or gravity of it until I went through and read their blog post about it and understood, like, oh no, they're generating this frame by frame live. Yeah. And it has persistence and it has interactive capability. Yeah. And
I mean, for people who are just listening and might not be watching the actual video, watch the video where it's pretty cool.
Definitely click over to our YouTube channel, or if you're in Spotify, like, open it up and take a look at the thing, because it's.
But the fundamental idea is it takes a scene from a picture and or video, right?
Yes, I think it can do a video clip, but definitely it can do different static images.
Right. Yeah. But imagine being able to like, oh, hey, like, let's pause this and let's turn this way. Like, what's over this way? Right. What's down that hallway? Right. Like, almost stepping into an existing digital scene and playing it like a video game.
Yes. Yeah, it is like that. That's the best, like, simplified description of it. It's like, basically you can play any scene like it's a fully immersive, fully realized video game.
Yeah. Like, it's not like interactive. Yeah. In the sense of like, you couldn't like probably pick up a soda can that's on a desk or whatever, but you can move around in it. And, like,
well, no, that's not true. You can interact with elements of the environment.
Oh, goodness. I missed that. That's even worse.
So one of the demos they show, and we'll include this video too, if I can figure out how to do that on the technical scale, or if they provide that asset, but is you can paint a wall. Like they're using a paint roller on a wall, and it's sticking, and how much you paint and don't paint remains static, right? And you can turn, or dynamic, and you can turn, look away, look back, and it's still there, right?
Yeah.
So it is truly interactive.
Oh, that's wild.
And
And look, I mean, I'm sure at this point they're being super selective in what they show. And like this could be cherry picked from a zillion examples
yeah,
that were super wonky. But the fact that we got to this point so fast
yeah,
is absurd.
it is absurd. And this is another area, like we were talking about earlier, like, are we at limits with like chatbots? But like this kind of thing feels still very early innings, right? And also the implications of it once fully deployed are huge. Like, let alone just video game impact, which is the obvious one, but like training in these virtual environments for robotics or for other types of AI intelligences will be massive, right? Because they can do it. They're not bound by any of our. We were talking about dimensions earlier. Like once you're in a virtualized space, you can manipulate all of those things. So you could speed it up to be like 1000x or whatever, right? Like there's a lot of like actual physics-based limitations of like why you probably couldn't do that in terms of like data bandwidth and cooling and that stuff, right? Like how much power it would take. But let's imagine you could do that because it is a virtualized environment, right? So then you condense whatever 10 billion hours of training to just like a couple months or something, right? Like you could dramatically increase the speed at which these things become more intelligent, should you be able to extend these things and make them persistent past a fixed few minutes of time, right? Which is
Yeah.
the thing they're working on next. When they talk about like what is next, like they want to get from seconds to hours. This is like the next step, right?
Yeah.
Hours would be totally fine for a video game environment if you can spend hours inside one of these environments and your impact remains persistent. Like no question, super fun video game, right? And
Yeah.
then
I mean, even the video games that we play right now oftentimes lose context or lose track of certain things. They're like, it doesn't bother to keep track of every enemy you've killed. They fade
yeah,
away because A, you don't want them there, and B, it runs out of memory. You
yeah,
know, like it's just not tracking that kind of stuff. And so there are things that it can do to improve its feel over time. But with all of this, the important thing to remember when you're watching these videos that we're going to clip in as B-roll, like, remember that this is effectively day 0 of this. Like this is day 0.5, right? So like any flaws that we see like right now, think about it in 5 years, 10 years. Like that is, it's wild that we're already here.
yeah, yeah, it is. And yeah, you can do, just to clarify, because I remembered this from the blog post, like it can use a static image. It can also use a text prompt. So you can just use a text prompt to generate these worlds too, and to generate like what you want to do in them and what the interactivity is, and to generate macro changes. Like, let's say you have a savanna or something, right? And you want to do like, okay, instead of like dry, arid conditions in the sun, like it's cold and there's thunderstorms and like a torrential downpour, and it will change those macro conditions as well, right?
You're going to
So,
get the sliders that you love so much. You're going to be able to slide your
oh
way through the
yeah,
weather.
wow. Yeah, I'm very excited about this. But I think that's even small scale. Like there are fundamental like think of it like multiverse, right? Like think of it like more like multiverses in like a cinematic universe context or whatever, right? Like you can introduce changes that change things that are fundamental about how the world operates and how the people within it or the creatures that populate it or whatever like exist. Like basically like go back and like do an evolutionary divergent path to like change this world. Like that's the kind of thing they're talking about, where you
Yeah.
can change the macro conditions, right? So
Yeah. I mean, when you go down that rabbit hole, you enter this weird spot where it's like, how does it gauge quality, right? So if it becomes a video game thing and it's like randomly generating, you tweak little aspects of it, you can go in, like, how good is the AI going to be at determining like this is actually fun? You know,
yeah,
like,
I don't think that'll be a consideration for it. So that's going to be a new, very interesting challenge. I've already seen people working with like in early generative gaming environments, and I think that does remain the biggest challenge so far. Like,
yeah,
to tie this back to GPT-5, they showed off like a game in it, which was very rudimentary. And one of the things they had was you can chat with any of the NPCs in the game, and they will provide you information. Like they were like, "What is your favorite song?" And it was like, "Oh, it's like a ballad of dogs and banners," because it was like a medieval castle themed thing. So it's like, oh, that's interesting. It is contextual and whatever, but is it fun? Is it really story driven? Is it like,
is it useful to me right now?
Yeah.
Right? Like that's the thing. Like I've spent way too much time playing video games and talking to NPCs, and oftentimes I'll judge a game whether or not like some random NPC in some distant village of Hyrule is able to get me back on path with just the right amount of information that I need right now. Right? Like, will you steer me back to where I should be to move me further down my path and help me progress? Because like, cool, like you want to tell me about your hobbies as NPC. It's cool that you have those. Also, I don't give a shit right now.
Right. Yeah, critical path stuff is, I think, the biggest challenge of any of those generative game efforts, right? It's like, do you have a critical path, and how do you direct people towards it? And then how do you do branching paths and stuff like that with intent and with like a real actual acumen for storytelling and for satisfactory conclusion? Yeah. Those are all the biggest questions I have around all the generative elements of video games.
So the boiled down version of it could make a crazy, super huge game. We don't know if it'd be any good.
Yeah, exactly. But then it might just redefine like what we think of as game. And it's like, yeah, do you want to go just like mess around in this alternate world? Like, that sounds pretty fun to me, but I don't know. Yeah, in theory, it could also be not fun at all. It's just not something we've experienced yet.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine it in like a Minecraft sort of thing, right? Like part of the fun of Minecraft, just like, let me dig a big hole. Let me see what's down here.
Right.
You know, and then you do that 3 or 4 times. You're like, okay, I've dug all the holes. I've seen all the caves. I've got to the...
But what if there was infinite variability, right?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's enough about that, just because it's like also one of those things where
we're going to come back to it.
We don't get to play it. And
yeah. Well, they'll ship another research thing on it in a couple of months, and we'll be like, serious, look at the difference. Look how far they've come.
And then eventually maybe we'll become important enough that they'll be like, you can just have access to this and play around with it.
Yeah. Good news, everybody. We got to go into the next simulation. We were there.
And we're not coming out again.
This will be the final episode, because that's where we live now. It's actual Second Life. Sorry, y'all.
Okay, do you want to wrap up with one of our regular segments?
Yeah, Two Truths and AI. You want to do it?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
Cue that theme music.
One truth here, one truth there. But can you find the fib somewhere? A riddle, a twist, a guessing game. Two truths and AI, that's the name. Two truths and AI. What's the truth? What's the lie? Two truths and AI. Can you guess before we try?
Okay. So for anybody who hasn't watched previous episodes, the idea here is that I'm going to present Darrell with 3 companies. 2 of them are real and existed at some point, and one of them is not real as best we can tell. In both cases, it's real as best we can tell, not real as best we can tell, and maybe we'll mess that up at some point. So I tried to have GPT-5 one-shot this time. I told it what I wanted.
Live testing of the new
This is a live test of GPT-5. Not live in the sense that I'm going to have it do it now, because I don't want to do it 3 times. But it did manage to give me a list of them that seemed to work. Okay. First one. Oh, we're taking turns here. We're keeping track in our head. I think it's 1-to-1 right now, right? Like
That's right.
We're trying to guess the one that is fake, the one that is AI generated. I think we're 1-to-1 right now. We're going to leave a little bit of time at the end between actually revealing the correct answer, so that if you want to play along at home, you can.
Yeah.
Okay. You ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay. The first one is Longshot Space. They're building a space gun to transform the economics of sending materials to space. They're building a super long tube in the middle of the desert that gradually increases the speed of an object until eventually it's moving fast enough to shoot out into space without rockets. Blinkbench is the second one. It's solar e-ink park benches that display city alerts and air quality data funded by rotating local ads. And the final one is Cuddle Clones. They make custom, weirdly delightful plush replicas of your pets from photos. So hopefully in your case, it would make a stuffy or a pillow of your actual dog and not just some weird blonde dog that you've never seen before.
Yes, gotcha. Okay, just give me the names again.
Longshot Space, Blink Bench, and Cuddle Clones.
I am gonna guess that the AI generated one is Blink Bench.
The AI generated one is Blink Bench. That's correct.
I was like very close to getting Cuddle Clones.
Cuddle Clones is a real one. I've actually seen ads for it on Facebook, so I was worried that it was too obvious because you might have seen the same Facebook or Instagram ads.
No, that one almost got me, but I vaguely remembered, like, I feel like I've heard of something like that, but not that specific thing. So that was why it tipped over. And the other deciding thing for me, the thing that I was going to pick, the reason I was going to say that Blink Bench was real was I was like, AI doesn't know anything about e-ink. There's no way. AI doesn't care about e-ink. It's too obscure and nerdy. So that was why I was leaning against it. Wow, I'm really glad I pulled that one out. It was super close. Long shot, unfortunately, and this is, Greg, where we're starting to get into some real ones, I know all about because I did used to be a space reporter and still keep up with the field. Right?
Yeah, I had a feeling you would know that one is real. I've actually met those dudes. They're here in Oakland, the Longshot Space Company. They are pretty wild. They are exactly who you'd want to be building a space gun. Like, imagine the persona of someone who's building a space gun. Just like
perfect,
super fun, super eccentric. That's them.
Yeah, I think I like that one. The alternate propulsion things, the alternate ways to get things into space are always super interesting to me. That one I find very interesting. The one that, not relativity, but the one that just that does the discus approach. So
the centrifuge one.
Yeah.
I mean, the challenge there that like they hit, right, is that if you spin something in a centrifuge super, super fast and then you let go of it, like it needs to counter that weight, right? So at like the exact same instant, something else that's the equal weight needs to snap on so the whole thing doesn't just like vibrate and like fall apart instantly, right? So, but it's really, really cool, this idea of like, what if we could just throw shit into space?
Yeah. I love that. I love the kinetic energy get thing to escape velocity is a very bold approach. And I also like, back in the day, I used to find very fascinating, like, what if we just like take it most of the way with another thing? And then it just has to launch a little bit. So that's like the Virgin Cosmic is what they used to call it or Virgin Orbit, which was like similar to Virgin Galactic, but they would just bring up inert payloads and then launch them on very small rockets off of the wings of 747s flying at like super, super high altitudes. And there was also like a hot air balloon version of that was Canadian, and I loved them. And I've met a bunch of people who are engineers there who used to work on it, and the stories are amazing because they're like, yeah, we didn't know what we were doing. We had no approval by the government. It was a whole mess. And then they backfilled a lot of the approvals and stuff, right? Of like, no, this was chill the whole time, right? And they were like, yeah, sure. It was chill. It was not chill.
It was super legal just because there's no law in the books.
Yeah. But wow, okay, another rising round, and
it's 1-2.
Oh yeah. I'm up, but so far AI, you're not doing too good. We can ascribe this to AI, really. Like AI is the one that needs to step up on this. It's not either of us, right? So, I will say that based on that score, it's not a real benchmark, but ChatGPT-5 has come the closest so far to actually fooling. So maybe we'll do some more model variants as part of this, as an intentional part of this.
We'll have 2 rounds in one episode, and we'll face ChatGPT-5 up against Opus 4.1 or something.
Yeah. All right, Greg. Well, I think we've already gone pretty long, but there was a lot to talk about this week with ChatGPT-5.
Yeah.
So hopefully people found that useful. And we'll save some of our other regular segments, which are everybody's favorite. I'm sure you were waiting for Art of Favorites based on the name alone. It'll be back in future iterations. Anything else that people should look forward to?
Another day on the planet, man.
That's right. Another day just enjoying the sweet, beautiful, real Earth that we have. That is not a simulation generated by DeepMind Genie 5 in the future. Definitely
All right,
not.
Man. Good talking to you, Darrell.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, I have two truths and AI ready. Grok Imagine mode, I know the silhouette of, like, I get that it's their
I'll talk about it because
it's their accidentally horny image generator, right?
yes, I used it a lot, not for horny purposes.
Okay.
No, honestly, I
kidding.
I don't know
I
what
know.
I was doing. Maybe I was using it wrong. I went and looked in the settings. I was like, well, NSFW is turned on, but it wasn't going horny for me by default. But then again, I was like,
Why
won't
you go horny?
It should not have. It should not have.